Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Better Together podcast for real estate agents. I'm Kiki King.
And I'm Brian Balisican.
And today we're talking about how to market your listings to sell in today's market.
And today we're happy to have Corey Takata, one of our locations partners who's been in the business for 9 years. Welcome, Corey.
Thank you so much.
Before we start, Corey, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up to becoming one of the most successful realtors in the industry today?
Well, I started here in October of 2014, so close to 9 years. My brother actually used to be a senior property manager here at Locations, so that's really how I got introduced to Locations. Never been to any other brokerage firm. You know, it kind of fell in my lap at that point, and I remember the first lunch I had with him, he brought to lunch Rod Mukai, and you know, that was a nice lunch that we had. You know, Rod was kind of sharing about Locations. I mean, he's been in here for 40 plus years now, yeah. So he shared about the business, about the company, and no intention at that time to get into real estate. But I was in the surf industry, so I was an independent sales rep for a handful of companies, and you know, it was fun at the time. But it kind of came to a point when Rod was speaking where, you know, it just felt right to make a transition. So went home, thought about it, and Locations at the time was actually bringing in a new greenie class in about a month or so. So made the decision to leave that industry and come here, and best decision I made.
Yeah, the rest is history.
The rest is history.
So Corey, with your previous life in the surf industry, and then now in real estate as one of our top producing agents, what are the things that you learned in your previous career that have carried over into real estate?
I think the biggest thing are the relationships that are cultivated and created. You know, in the surf industry, it was hard because as a sales rep, I mean, everybody knew everyone, right? But we were competing for floor space in the stores. Our friends are selling the same type of product. So when in the surf industry, one of the products that I had was sunglasses. You know, and then, so it was under a big company. We're owned by Billabong. So we had about 80 accounts in Hawaii, Guam, Tahiti, Samoa. And, you know, the relationships helped because as soon as I got my foot in the door with something, any other brand that I picked up or that I tried to rep, they were really open to giving me an opportunity because of the relationship that I had with the stores. And also with the reps too in the industry as well. If they knew that a store was interested in carrying a product that I had, they would reach out to me and say, hey, you know, you should talk to this person. And it wasn't really a dog-eat-dog industry. You know, everybody knew everybody, and I think that transitioned into the real estate side where, you know, the relationships are very important here, especially on the island, because, you know, the island is so small too, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, especially in real estate, right? Relationships are so important, and that's kind of a key theme with how you built your business too, you know? And so in addition to relationships, you know, I know you do a lot of listings as well, and right now the median days on market is about 3 times what it was at this time last year. So with that in mind, I mean, for those of our viewers who have listings, what do you feel is needing to be done in terms of marketing your listing in order to get it sold at the highest price in the shortest amount of time?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, especially for the newer agents. You know, I think we came out of a market where any licensed agent pretty much could take on a listing, put a sign out or list it on the MLS, and the thing would sell itself. You know, I think now, being that the days on market has increased, a lot of the marketing has to do prior to going live. You know, first of all, just taking the relationships of outside brokers, the relationships with locations agents, and pre-marketing the listing prior to it going into the MLS. You know, I think that's the first step in all my listings that I do or that I take on marketing it before the MLS. I think the second thing is, social media, all that stuff is really important in terms of exposure. But the biggest thing in terms of marketing, I think, besides the relationships, is really understanding maybe the type of buyer that the listing will attract, and then from there, focusing on, okay, how do I expose that listing to that segment of buyers, etc.
Yeah, that's important, right? Thinking about the buyer profile.
Corey, so pricing now is important, super important in this change of market, back to normal market. What are some ways that you have changed your strategy in educating your sellers nowadays compared to before, and anticipating not so much activity, not quick activity, and manage the expectations of your sellers?
Yeah, I think, again, going back to marketing the property prior to listing, it gives us an opportunity to test the market. I'm a big advocate of the coming soon status on the MLS, so I use that a lot to set expectations for the sellers or the clients, for instance. So, the pre-marketing, it gives us an opportunity to test the type of activity that we expect to get on a listing. I tell them, if we put it out there, we have the broker relationships, we have access at locations where we can see the target marketing for agents, where we can pull the agents who had recent sales in the neighborhood or things like that. With all that pre-marketing, I tell them, if it's crickets, if nobody comes back, or if I don't hear any requests to show or any further information, I use that to set the expectation that we don't know what the activity is going to be until we actually list. So that's something that I think is very important to do, especially now in this market. And that helps the sellers to understand that, hey, we're doing everything we can to market the property prior to going live. So if there's nothing coming, then what do we need to do to generate activity to expect people to come? Which, the first thing is price. Yeah, I think that's something that attracts anyone to anything, right? I mean, if you guys go shopping and something's priced at a certain amount, and it sits there, we all hope that it goes on discount, Same with listings, right? So I tell them, if we don't get any activity, then we just have to expect we may have to adjust the price sooner than anticipated. Yeah.
That's good. It's good that you have that conversation early on in your consultation with your sellers to kind of set their expectations about that correlation between, pricing strategy and the activity that you're generating from your listing, right? That's really good. I like that. So in addition to price, the other factors in marketing a listing, whether it's staging or photos, social media, whether it's print media, news media, mailers, that sort of thing. What else do you layer on into your marketing strategy that you think is vital to getting the word out there?
Yeah, I think locations does a great job with helping me expose the listing, even pre-marketing the property, right? So a lot of times marketing will, not a lot, I should say all the time, marketing would help me with exposing my listing to the neighborhood or the condo, for instance, with marketing mailers to the owners or to the neighborhood. They also do a great job with social media. We have a big social media platform, right? So marketing helps in that sense, where along with my own social media, they'll go ahead and showcase the listing. They'll do I believe we have print material and print marketing as well, and then also featured on Sunday news as well, right? I think it was KITV and Hawaii News Now, right, or Hi Now. So all those things help to expose the listing. We want to try and, for me personally, I like to hit as much avenues as possible on that side. But I also set the expectation, again, going back to that with the clients, that we may not attract somebody from these type of, different marketing, I guess, strategies. It's just another way to expose the property. So whatever I could do to get it out there, more eyes on the property, the more chances we're able to to get somebody to come through.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, especially when listings are sitting longer, right? Every opportunity that you have at your disposal to be able to get the marketing and get more eyes on it is necessary.
Yeah.
Right?
Especially now.
Yeah.
Corey, after you've done all your pre-marketing, it's on the market, but it's been sitting for some reason. What are ways that you refresh your listing or try to increase activity to get more attention to that listing?
To the property. Very good question. I think, for me, anytime a listing is sitting, I try to get feedback first from the brokers who did show it, that did schedule private showings at the property. What are some things that maybe would have made their client move forward on it? So asking those questions, I think, is very important. I think the easiest answer is adjusting the price. I think there's been a lot of price adjustments in the last, months or so, just leading up to this market that we're in. So setting the expectation, again, with the sellers in terms of if we were to adjust the price, which is the easiest, if they can't, pull up money to fix up, to renovate, to do all these things, or even to just sit longer, if it comes down to price, what price or how much can we reduce the price in order to attract a buyer? So something to think about is I always put the sellers in the buyer's shoes. And when I break it down, I say, okay, if you're only willing to adjust the price $5,000, how much would it change a buyer's monthly payment? And then from there, I say, okay, well, how much is it gonna take to draw you back to this property or draw a buyer to this property to move forward? The price adjustment has to be pretty significant to make a move. So I think that's something that just initially, it's an easy thing to do to attract buyers, but it also has to make sense. You can't just adjust it $2,000, $5,000. I mean, relative to the price point. Yeah, it has to make sense for, to attract that buyer that we're trying to hope for back to the property. Yeah.
Corey, I want to talk to you about quality in pictures, in videos. I know there's some agents who are lacking in skills and quality, like they only have one picture on their MLS or no picture at all, or just terrible pictures.
iPhone pictures.
iPhone picture, land, and it's landscape. But you're really doing an injustice to your seller when you promote their property like that. What do you feel on quality pictures and how if it's important to have that level?
I think it's definitely important to have professional, high-quality photos for your listings, and that's another thing that Locations does great for us. Is the first thing is we can't have or not allowed to have photos that are taken not professionally, whether it's with an iPhone or just as ourselves taking it. We need to hire a professional photographer, and that just speaks volume in terms of the quality that's out there in terms of how we market the property. It comes down to first impression, and that's why I think staging along with professional photos, video walkthroughs, any kind of media outlet that will really showcase the property well in its best light. To me, I think that's very important. I tell my buyers that are looking for properties that are buying property because or to live in, first impression is important. The first 7 to 10 seconds you walk in the door, you should be able to see yourself living here, feel like home. And that's something that I take onto my listings is we have to make sure that we present the property in its best light. And we have really the first 7 to 10 seconds to do that. So, and it comes down to, photos first before looking at the property.
Right. And not all buyers can see the property, for example, if they're in the mainland. So the next best thing to being there is looking at they depend on photos, they depend on videos, and sometimes even they can even make a decision if the videos are good, right? But if your pictures are terrible, your video, it kind of leaves a stereotype on the agent themselves, the company that they have, and how they would represent themselves, especially in a transaction if they get the offer accepted. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. We do see a lot of the agents who, I guess are not part-time agents. So a lot of us at locations, we're full-time, and for us, it's important to show the service that we provide. And it comes down to even marketing the property, right? I think that's very important. And then sometimes having bad photos or having properties that are maybe not staged, for instance, that kind of leaves us with inkling on maybe the seller is trying to save money, or maybe it's going to be a harder transaction. I don't know, but that's just some things that I look at. And you can kind of pinpoint, okay, is it going to be somewhat of a hard transaction for a seller to...
If the agent himself is taking shortcuts, what will he do in the transaction, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true, right? First impressions, right?
Yeah, it's very important.
You bring up virtual staging now. Do you use virtual staging? What are your thoughts on virtual staging? Is it helpful or?
I think it's helpful. Personally, I don't use virtual staging though. And again, it's because the first impression is you have virtual staging. This is just me though, right? You look at it, it's like it's a wow factor. But when you walk into the property, your expectation is that it's gonna look like what you saw based on photos. And when you get there, it's completely empty. It's like, it kind of leaves a different impression in my opinion. And that's why I love to do actual physical staging, because everything's there. They can picture the living room, for instance, or the bedrooms, or maybe even an office. So those are all different options that are out there for agents, but they're both good, but I lean towards the physical staging.
So Corey, you talked about how relationships is what's important to you, and you also talked about first impressions. It seems like you think a lot about how people think, how they feel, and one of the things that I want to point out is that in addition to being a partner and a successful agent here at Locations, you're also a coach. And you coach some agents, a group of agents here at Locations who are up and coming in their careers. So with this in mind, as you know, our viewers are real estate agents. Would you leave us with a final piece of advice for real estate agents as to how to get ahead in their career, or advice that you have for them to think about?
When I look back on my career, I was very fortunate enough to have mentors in the business. I think that's something that a lot of agents don't think about, but that's really what springboarded me throughout my early stages of my career. Even now, I still have those 3 same mentors that mentored me my first year in the business. They're still my mentors to this day. So I think that's very important. The other thing is just to never give up. I feel like, everybody gives up at that point where if they just kind of push through that, they could see the light at the end of the tunnel. And those are the 2 things that really pushed me forward, to where I am, is having the help. So having mentors, having coaches, something that we do here at Locations is to me, I think it's so valuable, and then to have that support, so the group that I coach and mentor, just to have that camaraderie and that support, to lean on somebody if times are hard, so just pushing forward and always cultivate the relationships in this business. I think, our industry sometimes has that stigma where it's a dog-eat-dog type of industry. Totally not the case. I think if you could create relationships not only within your company but outside as well, it's going to take you far. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you, Corey. Yes. Thanks for sharing your wisdom. Thanks for sharing your tips on marketing a listing in today's market. And we really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you, guys. And
thank you to all of you who have been watching. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Better Together podcast. I'm Kiki King.
And I'm Brian Balisican.
And stay tuned. Keep watching for more episodes of how to build a thriving and well-rounded real estate business. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Aloha.